My billionaire ex-husband saw me in a restaurant with 3 children who had his eyes, his mouth, and the exact same little crease between their eyebrows when they were confused. Julian Sterling froze in the middle of the dining room at L'Aurora with his fiancée on his arm, staring at my triplets as if the past had just stood up from a table and called him Dad. I didn't explain, and I didn't apologize. I slid my cell phone onto my lap, hit record, and placed a hand on Beckett's shoulder before Julian could take another step toward us. Audra Kensington saw the children too, and every last drop of color drained from her flawless face. Harper looked up from her small plate of pasta and whispered, "Mommy, why is that man looking at us? Because he once told the world he had lost you. Because his mother made sure he never heard my voicemails. Because I spent 5 years teaching myself not to wait for a man who believed everyone but me." I smiled at my daughter and said, "Some people forget their manners." Julian heard me. His jaw tightened once. Then he looked at the 3 children again and asked in a voice that sounded nothing like the man I married, nor the stranger who divorced me, "Sloan, how old are they?" 5, I said. The word hit him harder than a physical blow. Laura, right in the heart of Tribeca, was the kind of restaurant where people lowered their voices before lying. Soft amber lighting, crisp white tablecloths, glassware so fine that every sip felt expensive, and waiters who knew how to appear exactly when needed and vanish before hearing anything that could be used in a deposition. I wasn't there for romance. I was there because Chef Marcus Hayes wanted to test a children's tasting menu with my company, the Little Harbor Kitchen. He called it a partnership discussion. I called it a miracle I didn't expect before summer. My triplets called it fancy noodles. Harper sat to my left, carefully twirling artisanal cavatappi onto a child-sized fork with the intense focus of a surgeon. Beckett sat across from me, counting peas in groups of 3 because he valued fairness. Declan, who always looked as if he were deciding whether the world deserved his opinion, was sniffing an arugula leaf, as if it had personally offended him. "They put leaves on everything," he said. "That's arugula," I said. "It has too much confidence." Chef Marcus, standing near the end of our table in his immaculate white coat, laughed so hard he had to put a fist over his mouth. "This is my toughest food critic." Declan nodded. "I'm honest. You're 5. Harper corrected him. "I can be both." Beckett held up a pea. "If this is a tiny green meatball, I like it." "It's not a meatball," I said. "Then I don't like it." Marcus looked at me with pure delight. "Sloan, I need them at every tasting. You say that now, I mean it. Adults lie about food. Kids commit crimes with the truth." That was why I liked him. The Little Harbor Kitchen had started as pure survival dressed up as a business plan. When the triplets were infants, I prepped freezer meals for other exhausted parents because cooking for 3 babies had taught me efficiency, nutrition, and how to cry silently over soup. Then a daycare director asked me to cater lunches. After that, a pediatric clinic requested allergy-friendly snack boxes. Then the Department of Education brought me in as a consultant. 5 years after walking out of Julian Sterling's world with a suitcase, a pregnancy report, and zero faith that anyone would rescue me, I had an actual brand. Small, but mine. I watched the kids eating under the golden lights and felt the strange, aching peace of hard-won survival. That was when the maitre d' turned toward the entrance and straightened his posture. The atmosphere shifted. It didn't go silent rooms full of wealthy people rarely do. They just soften around power. Conversations paused, then resumed an octave lower. A waiter shifted his tray to his other hand. Someone near the bar whispered a last name. I didn't look up immediately. I knew before I knew. My body recognized him before my mind allowed it. Julian Sterling walked into L'Aurora with Audra Kensington clinging to his arm. He looked exactly like the version of him the world loved, and nothing like the man I used to watch fall asleep with financial reports resting on his chest. Dark tailored suit, silver tie, hair a little shorter than before, shoulders squared to the room because rooms always opened up for him. Audra glowed beside him in pale champagne silk. Her hand rested on his sleeve with a confidence that said she expected to be photographed. She was beautiful in that polished way that money fosters soft hair, a perfect smile, a diamond small enough to look tasteful, but large enough to be noticed. My fork stopped halfway to my plate. For 5 years, I had imagined seeing him again in a dozen different places: a courthouse, a Manhattan crosswalk, a school fundraiser, a nightmare. Never in a restaurant where my children were debating arugula. Julian scanned the dining room. His eyes swept over me once, then snapped back a second later. I saw a meaningless recognition, the face of a man who unexpectedly spots an old photograph. Then Beckett laughed. Julian's gaze dropped to him. The world shrank. Beckett had Julian's eyes sharp, storm cloud gray. Declan had his mouth, including the stubborn line that appeared when something displeased him, but he intended to pretend otherwise. Harper had the Sterling scowl, that tiny crease that once made Eleanor Sterling say, "Our family looks annoyed even in baby pictures." All 3 children turned because they felt the stare. All 3 looked at Julian. And my ex-husband froze. He didn't pause. He turned to stone. Audra noticed his body halt, before she noticed why. She followed his gaze to my table. Her face shifted so fast, I almost doubted it happened. Fear is honest before pride edits it. I slid my phone from my purse to my lap and started recording. Not because I wanted to cause a scene, but because I had learned too late that the people who control the narrative always start spinning it before you even know a story is being told. Harper leaned toward me. "Mommy, why is that man looking at us?" I put my hand on Beckett's shoulder. "Some people forget their manners," I said. Julian heard me. His jaw clenched. Marcus, sensing the shift in the room, stepped closer to our table. "Sloane, is everything all right?" "Yes," I said. Even though it wasn't true, it also wasn't the point. Julian walked toward us. Audra grabbed his sleeve. He didn't stop. Every step seemed to cost him a piece of his certainty. When he reached the table, he looked at me first. Then at the children. Then at me again. "Sloane." My name in his voice did something cruel to my body. It remembered before I could stop it. Midnight conversations. His hand on my waist, the way he used to say my name when he wanted silence, not answers. I didn't stand up. "Julian." Audra caught up to him. Her smile was back, but it was brittle now. "Sloane." What a surprise. That word seems insufficient, I said. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Julian couldn't take his eyes off the kids. "Who are they?" Declan frowned. "We're people." "Declan," Beckett whispered. Harper sat up straighter. "I'm Harper. He's Beckett. He's Declan." Julian's face lost another shade of color. I could almost see him doing the math. Harper, Beckett, Declan. 3 names, 3 faces, 1 old timeline. Audra let out a breathless, high-pitched laugh. "Adorable. Are they yours, Sloane?" The question was sharp enough to draw blood. I looked at her. "Yes." Julian's voice dropped to a rough rasp. "How old are they?" I could barely hear the dining room anymore. The clinking forks, the distant laughter, it was all drowned out by my own pulse. 5, I said. The word landed. 5. Not 4. Not 6. Not distant enough to justify anything else. 5 meant conception before the divorce was finalized. 5 meant I was pregnant when his mother's corporate lawyer slid a buyout agreement across my hospital bed. 5 meant Julian was standing in a room where Audra could watch his entire reality collapse. He gripped the back of an empty chair. His knuckles turned white. "Triplets?" "Yes." Beckett looked back and forth between us. "Mommy?" My son's voice pulled me back to the right battlefield. Not Julian's shock, not Audra's fear. My kids. I leaned toward them. "Finish your water, please. We're going to leave soon." "Did I do something bad?" Declan whispered. "No, sweetheart." Julian flinched at the word sweetheart. "Good. Let him understand that 5 years had a language he didn't speak. Audra put a hand on his arm. Julian, this isn't the place. He finally looked at her. Something passed between them. I knew that look. The silent communication of people with a shared secret suddenly dragged into the light. Julian turned back to me. We need to talk. Now. His eyes sharpened. There was the man who believed a request became an instruction when delivered in the right tone of voice. No, I said. Not here. Not in front of my children. My children. He echoed. The words slipped out of his mouth before he could stop them. The previously civilized table went completely still. Harper's fork dropped onto her plate with a clatter. Beckett's hand tightened around his cloth napkin. Declan's eyes narrowed in a way that always terrified his preschool teachers, but privately delighted me. I stood up then. Slowly. Marcus stepped a fraction closer. They are children, I said quietly. Not evidence you can lay claim to in a dining room. Julian looked as if I'd slapped him. Audra recovered first. Maybe we should all just calm down. There are a lot of explanations here. I stared at her until her smile cracked. Julian spoke again. Sloane, if they are mine, you had no right to hide them. The old wound split open, but not like before. It opened and revealed only scar tissue. I tried to tell you. His face hardened. No. A single word. Immediate denial. So familiar. You disappeared, he said. You signed the settlement. You took the wire transfer. I rejected the wire transfer. Audra's eyes darted away. Julian didn't notice. My mother said I know what your mother said. A waiter froze 3 feet away, unsure whether to pour water or flee. Marcus intervened smoothly. Mr. Sterling, perhaps we could move this conversation to a private room. No, I said, picking up my purse. We are leaving. Julian's gaze locked onto me again. You can't just walk away. I almost laughed. 5 years collapsed into a single sentence. He still thought leaving required his permission. I gathered Harper's denim jacket, Beckett's sketchbook, and Declan's plastic dinosaur from the table. My hands moved with ruthless efficiency because mothers learn how to pack up under pressure. I paid the bill with the Amex I had earned myself. Not the black card the people in his social circle accused me of chasing. Audra leaned toward me as I corralled the kids. Sloane, think about this very carefully. If those kids are Julian's, this is going to get incredibly messy. I met her eyes. It got messy when I was bleeding in a hospital hallway and your name was on his phone. All the color vanished from her face. Julian snapped his head toward her. What does that mean? But Beckett was already standing. Harper's chin had started to quiver. And Declan had positioned himself between Julian and me with a fierce bravery no 5-year-old should ever need. So I did what I had done. Since the day they were born. I chose them first. Step aside, I told Julian. He didn't move. Marcus lowered his voice. Mr. Sterling, 2 men in dark suits from the restaurant's front security detail appeared. Not making it obvious, but making it clear. Julian saw them. Power recognizes power. He stepped aside. I guided the triplets through the restaurant. Behind me, I heard Audra whisper his name. I didn't look back. In the vestibule, Marcus caught up to me. Sloane, I'm saving the reservation notes and the hallway security footage. I looked at him in surprise. He understood the game faster than most. Thank you. My sister went through custody hell, he said. I know how this starts when I see it. Outside, the crisp New York air hit my face. The kids climbed into the back seat of my SUV one by one. Harper buckled her seatbelt with shaking fingers. Beckett asked again, his voice much quieter now. Mommy, why did that man look like Declan? I gripped the steering wheel tight, because breaking down could wait. The truth couldn't always. I looked at them in the rearview mirror. We'll talk at home, I said. Where it's safe. My phone buzzed before I started the car. Unknown number. Then a text. Do not leave the city. Julian. I put the phone away. Then I turned off location sharing on every app, even though none of them should have still been connected to him. Old fears are thorough. I started the engine. In the mirror, through the restaurant's glass front, I saw Julian standing in the vestibule, watching my taillights pull away like he was watching 5 lost years disappear into the traffic. Declan threw up in the parking lot of an all-night CVS 12 minutes after we left Laura. Not because he was sick, but because the adrenaline had nowhere else to go. I pulled into the first well-lit spot I saw, unbuckled my seatbelt faster than my hands wanted to work, and got him out of his car seat. He was pale and furious, which was how Declan handled vulnerability. Harper was crying silently in the back, the tears falling straight down without a sound. Beckett kept asking if we were in trouble. Nobody is in trouble, I said, wiping Declan's mouth with napkins from the glove compartment. Nobody. Then why did he say my children? Beckett asked. 5-year-olds hear the words adults think are too complicated for them. They hear the tone, they hear the danger, they hear the possession. I knelt on the asphalt next to the open car door and looked at all 3 of their faces. We met someone from my past, I said. He was surprised. He used the wrong words. Declan wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He was mean. He was in shock. That can look mean. Audra said you had right, Harper sniffled. I touched her hair. She did. My phone buzzed again. Julian. Then an unknown number. Then Audra. I didn't answer. I helped Declan rinse his mouth with water from Harper's water bottle. Beckett insisted on sharing his emergency mint. Declan accepted it as a diplomatic concession. By the time we got home to Queens, the kids were exhausted in that heavy way that fear drains children. They didn't ask for cartoons. They didn't fight over who got to unlock the apartment door. They followed me into the kitchen, quiet and watchful. Our apartment in Astoria was small, warm, and entirely mine. 2 bedrooms, a living room overflowing with toy bins and catering samples, a kitchen where the industrial freezer held labeled meal prep trays for clients right next to dinosaur chicken nuggets for emergencies. On the wall by the table hung 3 framed finger paintings and a calendar with school events color-coded for each child. This was not the world Julian lived in. This world had mismatched socks, overdue library books, and a coffee maker that sounded like it was negotiating with death every morning. It had never required his permission to exist. Shoes off, I said. They obeyed too quickly. That hurt. I made chamomile tea with honey. The ritual mattered. 3 small mugs, blue for Beckett, yellow for Harper, green for Declan. 1 ceramic mug for me that said N.O. in capital letters, because my best friend Blair bought it for me after I survived potty training the triplets. We sat at the kitchen table. I kept my voice steady. The man in the restaurant is named Julian. Beckett leaned forward. He's the man in the photo box. I froze. The photo box. I kept a small shoebox on the top shelf of my closet, with things I didn't show them, but couldn't bring myself to throw away. Old pictures, the wedding invitation, the hospital bracelet from the day I found out I was carrying 3, and a photo of Julian laughing on a beach in Nantucket before money, family, and mistrust turned him into someone unreachable. Beckett had found it once when he was 4 and asked if the man was a prince. I had told him it was someone I used to know. Yes, I said. He's the man in the photo box. Harper's hands curled around her yellow mug. Was he your husband? I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second. Yes. Declan stared at his mint wrapper. Is he our dad? The question walked into the room and sat down like it owned the place. I had imagined this conversation in 100 different versions when they were older, when I had my legal binders perfectly prepared, when I could explain it without anger, when I could make it soft enough not to wound. Children don't wait for your ideal timeline. I believe he is your biological father, I said. Beckett frowned. What's biological? It means from the body. It means the father who helped create you, Harper whispered. But he didn't know us. No. Why? There it was. The question I had been answering in my own head for 5 years. Because he believed the wrong people. Because I was too weak after the hospital to fight billionaires. Because his mother stood by my bed with a lawyer while my blood pressure crashed. Because his fiancée smiled while holding the phone I was calling. Because I chose survival over explanations. I looked at my children and gave them the truth they could carry without being crushed by it. Because grown-ups make mistakes, I said. Very big mistakes. And some people didn't tell the truth. Declan's eyes narrowed. Did you tell the truth? I did. I told the truth. And I also left to keep you safe. That was the part I needed them to hear. Not that Julian was a monster. Not that I was a saint, just that safety had been a choice. Beckett asked, "Does he love us?" I hated Julian for making that question necessary. I think he was very surprised. I said carefully, "Loving someone isn't just a feeling. It's showing up safely, kindly, and slowly. If he wants to know you, he will have to do it the right way." Harper looked down. "Do we have to meet him?" No. All 3 heads snapped up. I repeated it. "No, you do not have to do anything tonight. You don't have to hug him. You don't have to talk to him. You don't have to call him anything. You are allowed to feel curious or mad or scared or nothing at all," Declan whispered. "I feel like throwing up again." "That's allowed too." A tiny laugh escaped Beckett. The tension in the room softened by exactly 1 inch. After the tea, I let them sleep in my bed. They formed a warm, tangled pile of limbs and stuffed animals. Harper clung to her plush bunny. Beckett slept with one hand gripping Declan's sleeve. Declan, who denied fear on principle, pressed his foot hard against my leg until he drifted off. I stepped out into the hallway and called Diane Roth. She answered on the second ring. "I saw your missed calls," she said. "Are the kids safe?" "Are you safe?" "I don't know." That's the honest answer. "Tell me everything." I told her. Laura, Julian, Audra, the confrontation, the kids, the text message. Diane listened without interrupting. Diane had been my lawyer since the pregnancy became impossible to hide in the divorce paperwork. She handled my name change back to Sloan Sullivan, the birth certificates, my LLC incorporation, and the massive encrypted file I affectionately called "In Case Sterling Finds Us." She was pragmatic, sharp, and impossible to intimidate even in sensible flats. When I finished, she said, "Do not reply to Julian directly tonight." I wasn't going to. Good. Screenshot everything. Send me the restaurant name, the time, the witnesses, and any texts. I will draft a formal cease and desist and a boundary notice by morning. We need to control the DNA process, if there is one, and prevent any emergency ex parte custody nonsense. The word custody made my stomach turn. He can't just take them. No, but billionaires can file motions fast and scare you by making a lot of noise. We won't let panic dictate the framework. I leaned against the hallway wall. The apartment smelled of chamomile and kids' strawberry shampoo. "Diane," I said. He looked destroyed. "Destroyed men still hire aggressive litigators," she replied smoothly. "That was why I paid her. Do you think I was wrong not to tell him sooner?" She was quiet for half a second. "I think you survived with the information and the power you had at the time. Now, we protect what you've built." After hanging up, I forwarded the recordings, screenshots, restaurant details, and Chef Marcus's contact info. Then I went to my closet and pulled down the old file box. I hadn't touched it in months. Inside were neatly organized manila folders. Pregnancy, hospital, divorce, settlement, communications, rejected wire, birth, legal. My fingers hovered over the tabs. 5 years of preparation, waiting for a knock on the door I prayed would never come. At 11:30 p.m., Julian texted again. "I need to know if they're mine." At 11:35 p.m., "Sloan, answer me." At 11:39 p.m., "If my mother knew about this, Tell me right now. That text made me sit down hard on the edge of the bed. Not if you lied. Not why did you hide them. If my mother knew, a tiny, dangerous crack in his reality. I didn't answer. At 11:47 p.m., Audra sent a text. You should tread very carefully. Those children deserve stability, not a revenge plot. I screenshotted it. Then I opened the pregnancy folder. The first document was the blood test. Positive. The HCG levels were so high the nurse had smiled and said, maybe it's twins. The second was the early ultrasound. 3 sacs. 3 flickering pulses. 3 impossible miracles on a black and white screen. I had tried to call Julian from the hospital hallway that day. He hadn't answered. The memory surged up with such force I had to snap the folder shut. From the bedroom, Harper mumbled in her sleep. I went back to them. I lay down next to my children and stared at the ceiling until the morning began to paint the room gray. Julian Sterling had seen the triplets. The past had finally found our table, but the next move wouldn't be his. At 6:30 the next morning, Harper requested shield. Shaped toast. Not hearts, not stars. Shields. I made them. Beckett arranged sliced strawberries like security checkpoints. Declan stabbed his toast shield with a plastic fork and declared it strong enough to defeat arugula. Ordinary life had resumed. Bravery isn't the absence of crisis. It's the insistence that breakfast still gets served. Blair arrived at 7 a.m. holding iced coffees, legal pads, and the expression of a woman fully prepared to fight someone in a parking lot. She took one look at the kids and softened. Who needs emergency cinnamon rolls? She asked. Me! All 3 yelled. Blair Sullivan was my best friend, business partner, unofficial aunt, and the only person who had seen me bloated, broke, terrified, and still trying to calculate wholesale carrot prices while nursing 2 babies and rocking the third with my foot. She had invested her life savings into the Little Harbor kitchen when it was just a spreadsheet and a blender. She told people she did it because my sweet potato muffins were visionary. The truth was, she did it because she refused to let me disappear. After breakfast, she took the triplets into the living room to build a fort out of couch cushions while I sat at the kitchen table with Diane on speakerphone. Diane's voice filled the room. I couriered the formal notice to Sterling's legal counsel at 6:05 a.m. No direct contact, no unscheduled visits, absolutely no approaching the school, your home, your business, or public events. Any DNA testing must be done through an agreed-upon clinical provider with child-sensitive protocols. Any attempt to file for emergency custody based on last night's public encounter will be met with a motion for sanctions and evidence of his prior lack of knowledge through no fault of yours. I closed my eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Hydrate. I hate it when lawyers become mothers. That's because mothers are scarier, Blair yelled from the living room fort. Correct, Diane continued. Now we organize the file. I need the old medical records, proof of the rejected settlement, and every piece of communication proving your attempt to notify him. I have them. I know I do. Today we make them usable. The usable truth is different from the actual truth. The actual truth lived in my bones. The glare of the hospital lights, the blood pressure monitors, Julian's voicemail greeting, Eleanor's pearls brushing against the foot of my bed, Audra's expensive perfume in the hallway, the way my hand shook around a pen when a corporate lawyer told me, Mrs. Sterling, this will all be much easier if you just accept reality. The usable truth required timestamps. I opened the pregnancy folder. The first blood test was dated April 12th, 5 years and 8 months ago. I had taken it after passing out during a client consultation in the executive dining suite of the Sterling Group. Julian was in Tokyo closing a merger. I called him from the clinic parking lot, laughing and crying simultaneously. He didn't answer. I texted a photo of the test. The read receipt showed delivered. No reply. 3 days later, I had the first ultrasound. 3. The ultrasound tech went quiet, then fetched the doctor. I thought silence meant disaster. It meant multiplication. I emailed Julian the ultrasound image. No reply. I called his office. His assistant said he was unavailable. I called his private line. Voicemail. I sent another email. Subject: please call me. Important. No reply. Diane asked, do you still have the original email headers? Yes. Good. Next folder. Hospital. At 10 weeks pregnant, I started bleeding. It wasn't catastrophic, but it wasn't safe. I called Julian from the bathroom floor while trying not to hyperventilate. He was back in the country by then, but he had moved into the guest wing of our penthouse after we fought about Audra's increasing presence in his professional life. He didn't answer. I called again from the cab. Again from triage. Again after Dr. Evelyn Cho confirmed that all 3 heartbeats were still there. But I needed overnight observation. At 11:42 p.m., Eleanor Sterling arrived. Not Julian. Eleanor walked into the hospital room wearing a gray cashmere coat. Her lawyer stood waiting in the hallway next to Audra, both visible through the glass door. I remembered the sheer humiliation of wearing a thin hospital gown while my mother-in-law wore cashmere. You need to stop this, Eleanor had said. I had one hand protectively over my stomach. Where is Julian? Busy saving the company you destabilized. I'm pregnant. Her eyes flicked to the monitor. I know exactly what you're trying to do. Eleanor pulled documents from her designer tote and placed them on the rolling tray table. A divorce settlement, an ironclad NDA, a massive alimony buyout, a waiver of residency, and a medical privacy release. I refused to sign. Then Eleanor told me that Julian had seen the preliminary charts and believed I was using an unstable pregnancy to emotionally manipulate him. I still refused to sign. But 2 days later, discharged with strict bed rest instructions, I returned to the penthouse on Central Park South to find my access code deactivated. Building security handed me a suitcase. Inside were clothes I hadn't packed, my prenatal vitamins, and our wedding photo placed face down. Julian never came to the lobby. The official divorce packet arrived via courier the next day. It contained a note from his lawyer stating that all communication must be handled through legal channels. Then, a massive wire transfer hit my checking account. I rejected it and sent the funds back that same afternoon. Diane clicked her tongue over the speakerphone. You have the bank proofs? I opened the rejected wire folder, confirmation slips, and the email to his financial controller. Blair walked into the kitchen silently and put a hand on my shoulder. I hadn't realized I was crying. Not loud, just leaking tears of old, exhausted anger. The kids are deep in the fort, Blair whispered. Declan is currently drafting legislation. Of course he is. Diane softened her voice. Sloan, we can pause. No. The past had waited 5 years because I needed to build a life first. Now, it was going to be weaponized. The communications folder was the worst. Screenshots of sent texts, unanswered emails, voicemail transcripts, a FedEx receipt for a package I sent to Julian's private office containing the physical ultrasound report and a handwritten letter. The delivery signature read, A. Kensington, Audra. I had stared at that receipt for years. It didn't prove she read it. It only proved it reached her hands. There was also Audra's text message to me 3 weeks later. Sloan, he knows enough. Stop making this so cruel. He is grieving the marriage too. I had replied, Did he see the ultrasound? No response. Diane sucked in a breath when she saw the FedEx receipt. That is gold, Sloan. We need the original if possible. It's in the fireproof safe. Good. Hospital visitor logs? I opened the hospital folder again. Nurse Maya Brooks had helped me request them a month after I gave birth, when I finally had the strength to fight the bureaucracy. The logs showed Eleanor Sterling entered maternity triage at 11:31 p.m. Audra Kensington entered the waiting area at 11:43 p.m. Julian Sterling never entered at all. At noon, Diane called back after speaking with Sterling's legal team. They want DNA tests fast. Of course they do. Do they also claim Julian had zero knowledge of the pregnancies or births? Pregnancies, I noted. Diane caught it. Yes, plural. His lawyers used very careful language. He might already suspect your evidence. What's our play? We agree to the DNA test under strict conditions. Zero public disclosure. Zero contact with the children outside the clinical process. Results delivered to the lawyers only. No press. No family involvement. I looked toward the living room. Harper was reading a picture book to Beckett inside the fort. Declan was wearing a fleece blanket like a judge's robe. What if the results hurt them? I asked. Biology won't hurt them, Diane said. Adults will. That's what we're going to control. After lunch, a black Escalade parked on the street across from our apartment building. Blair noticed it first. Tell me that isn't billionaire surveillance. I peeked through the blinds. The driver stayed inside. Nobody got out. My phone buzzed. Julian. I know you were in the hospital. I pulled an archived call log. My breath caught. Another text. Why did my mother sign your discharge papers? I sat down slowly. Blair read over my shoulder. The first crack had widened, but cracks aren't apologies. I screenshotted the texts and sent them to Diane. At 3 p.m., another text arrived. This one from Audra. You kept records because you always intended to weaponize those kids against him. My hand tightened around the phone. Before I could type a furious reply, Declan appeared in the kitchen doorway in his blanket robe. Mommy. Beckett broke the law. What law? He moved the load-bearing pillow without a permit. Blair whispered dramatically. Straight to jail. I looked at my son, his serious little face, his storm cloud eyes, living a life Julian hadn't earned a place in yet. Then I looked at Audra's text. I didn't type anything. I just saved it. The evidence folder was growing, and so was my resolve. The DNA clinic had pastel whales painted on the walls, which somehow made it worse. Someone had tried to make the room cheerful. But the cheer sat too brightly on top of the reason we were all there. Harper held my hand. Beckett held Blair's. Declan walked slightly ahead like a tiny soldier who had decided fear was beneath him. Julian was standing near the reception desk. Alone. No Audra. No Eleanor. No army of lawyers. Just Julian Sterling in a dark overcoat, looking like he hadn't slept since Laura. He turned when we walked in. His eyes went straight to the kids, then up to me. Sloan, he said. I kept my voice perfectly level. Julian. Diane stepped between us, holding a clipboard. Mr. Sterling. The terms are clear. No unsupervised conversation with the minors. No photography. No physical contact unless initiated by the child and approved in the room. The clinic staff will explain the swab. We are not discussing legal conclusions here. Julian nodded once. Powerful men look incredibly strange when forced to obey instructions involving cotton swabs. The clinic coordinator, a woman named Miss Morales, knelt to the kid's eye level and explained everything. It's just like brushing the inside of your cheek with a very soft Q-tip, she said. Declan eyed her with deep suspicion. Does it taste bad? Not really. That means yes. Beckett raised his hand. Will it hurt? No. Harper asked. Will it tell us if he's the biological father? Julian's face shifted. The phrasing struck him. Biological father. Not dad. Not daddy. Not a man with bedtime stories or school permission slips, or a favorite way to make pancakes. A biological question in a brightly painted room. Miss Morales looked at me. I nodded. It can help answer that. Yes, she said gently. Julian swallowed hard. Declan went first because he liked to defeat things. Beckett went second. After confirming the swab wasn't secretly a needle, Harper went last, serious and quiet. Then Julian stepped forward for his sample. Declan watched him intently. "You have the same eyebrow line as me." Julian froze. "I do?" "Yes." Declan pointed to his own brow. "It does this when you're thinking something mean." For the first time in 5 years, I saw Julian almost smile. Almost. "I'm not thinking anything mean," Declan evaluated him. "You were at the restaurant." The near smile vanished. I was in shock. "That can look mean," Harper chimed in. Julian looked down at her. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am learning that." "Don't soften," I told myself. Learning after the damage is done is not the same as repairing it. After the samples were taken, Diane guided us into a consultation room. She had arranged for a child psychologist, Dr. Sophia Medina, to observe the first controlled interaction. Julian sat across from the kids with both hands visible on his knees, exactly as instructed. He looked ridiculous. He looked terrified. I hated that a small part of me noticed he also looked human. Dr. Medina said, "Guys, you can ask him one question each if you want to." "You don't have to," Beckett whispered to Blair, then looked at Julian. "Do you like toast?" Julian blinked. "Yes." "What shape?" He looked completely lost. "Round?" He tried. Beckett looked profoundly disappointed. "We do shields now," Harper informed him. Declan asked, "Are you rich like a dragon? Or rich like a bank?" Diane coughed into her hand. Julian looked at me before answering. "Smart kid. That depends on the story," he said. "But I have more money than most people need." Declan nodded. "Dragon." Harper's question was last. "Why didn't you come when we were babies?" The room went dead silent. Dr. Medina leaned forward a fraction but didn't interrupt. Julian looked at Harper. His expression shattered in a way I didn't want to see. "Because I didn't know," he said. Harper's eyes filled with tears. "Mommy knew." "Yes," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I should have listened to her." That was closer to the truth than anything he had said in the restaurant. I looked away. After the session, Diane took the kids out to the waiting room with Blair. I stayed because Julian asked for 2 minutes through the lawyers, and Diane allowed it with the door propped wide open. He stood near the mural of the whales, staring at nothing. "I pulled a corporate phone log," he said. "From the night of the hospital." I didn't answer. My old head of security still had the archives. "You called 11 times." "Yes. My mother told me you refused to speak to me." "I know." He rubbed both hands fiercely over his face. "Audra signed for a FedEx package." "Yes." "She told me it was legal junk mail from your attorney." "Of course she did." His eyes snapped up to mine. "Why didn't you fight harder?" The question was spoken softly, yet it stung like a physical strike. I took one step forward, but not too close. I was 10 weeks pregnant with triplets, bleeding, locked out of the penthouse, cut off from my own husband, facing down your mother's attack dog lawyer, and trying not to lose my babies. How much harder would have satisfied you? All the blood left his face. "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes, you did. You meant, why didn't I smash through every barrier your world put between us, just so you could feel less guilty right now?" He shut his mouth tight. "Fine." I grabbed my purse. "I will cooperate with the legal DNA protocol," I said. "I will not cooperate with you rewriting my survival as a lack of effort." Sloan. "No." Diane appeared in the doorway. "We're done here." As I walked out, Julian said, "I'm not bringing Audra around them." I stopped. "You already did." His jaw clenched. "I mean going forward." "Going forward, you don't get to decide unilaterally who enters my children's lives." He nodded stiffly. "For now." When we got home, I found a package on the doorstep of our apartment. No return address. Inside were 3 silver-plated photo albums, embossed with the Sterling family crest. I didn't open them in front of the kids. On the first page was a handwritten card from Eleanor Sterling. For my grandchildren. They should know where they come from. No mention of me. No apology. No permission asked. I took a photo of the package, sealed it back up, and called Diane. Her voice went flat. Do not respond directly. I am sending a formal boundary violation notice. The next morning, the DNA results came back. All 3 children matched Julian Sterling with a 99.99% probability. I sat at the kitchen table and read the line until the letters stopped looking like words. Blair set a coffee down in front of me. You already knew, she said. Yes, but now they know. My phone vibrated. Julian. Sloan, please. Just 2 words. Please. I didn't answer. Not yet. Julian sent a playroom. Not toys. Not a toy. An entire playroom. A designer from a luxury children's interior firm called Diane's office to ask if the children's father could coordinate the delivery of a Montessori climbing structure, 3 custom reading pods, a sensory wall, a music station, a handcrafted train table, and age-appropriate transitional comfort items to my apartment. Diane forwarded me the email with a single line. I assume this is a hard pass. I replied, correct. By noon, a second request arrived via Sterling's lawyers. Mr. Sterling wishes to provide immediate support, including housing upgrades, educational trusts, private security details, wardrobe provisioning, private pediatric concierge care, and enrichment resources. Housing upgrades. As if my apartment were a temporary defect, I stood in the kitchen looking at the email while the triplets painted paper plates at the table. Harper was painting a sun. Beckett was drawing a map. And Declan was painting his entire plate pitch black because space is serious. Julian thought money could catch up. Money could buy chairs, schools, doctors, coats, guards, tutors, names on buildings. It couldn't buy the first 5 years. It couldn't buy Declan's terror in the CVS parking lot. It couldn't buy Harper's question back in the room with the painted whales. It couldn't buy the fact that Beckett never once asked if we were in trouble. I called Diane. We need a support framework, I said, but absolutely no direct gifts, no access, and no him taking over our lifestyle. Agreed. He can establish educational trusts. Yes. An independent investment fund in the minors' names. A neutral trustee. 0 control from the Sterling Foundation. No conditions attached regarding their last names or visitation rights. He can pay standard child support. Should he? We can legally force him to learn their schedules first. Diane paused. That's not usually a legal requirement, but it's yours. I'll draft it diplomatically. You mean threateningly? I contain multitudes. At 3 p.m., Julian showed up outside the Little Harbor kitchen. The workspace was a renovated old bakery on a quiet street in Queens. We used the front to handle pickup orders and tastings, and the back for prep. There were hand-washing charts on the walls, neatly labeled bins of allergy-friendly ingredients, and a whiteboard tracking school menu testing. It smelled like roasted carrots and cinnamon. Julian's black Escalade pulled up to the curb. Blair saw him first. Well, look at that, she muttered. The dragon found the village. I wiped my hands on my apron. Keep the back door locked. Already is. Julian walked in carrying a cardboard box. No visible security. No lawyers. No Audra. Progress. Maybe. He looked around the space with an expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise, perhaps. The kind of surprise people feel when they discover life actually went on without them. I sent the request through the lawyers, he said. I know. You rejected everything. You rejected a playroom. His mouth tightened. I'm trying to help. You're trying to furnish a museum of guilt. Blair made a noise from behind the counter. Julian glanced at her. She smiled, showing all her teeth. Carry on. This is educational. He looked back at me. I brought something smaller, He set the cardboard box on the counter. I didn't touch it. What is it? Information. That surprised me. Inside were 3 pink toothbrushes, 3 blue toothbrushes, 3 green toothbrushes, 3 small notebooks, and a stack of printed forms. I stared at them. Julian looked genuinely embarrassed. I asked Dr. Medina what the first thing late-arriving parents should learn, he said. My throat tightened. I hated that. I hated that he had asked the right person. She said routines, he continued. Food allergies, comfort objects, sleep schedules, things that scare them, favorite things. Medical history. She also said not to assume I can just hand them things before I know what they already have. He pushed the notebooks toward me. I want to know it the right way. Blair went very quiet. I opened one notebook. Harper. Favorite breakfast. Shield toast with strawberries. Dislikes. People raising their voices near doors. Comfort object. Gray. Bunny. Allergies. None known. Sensitive to artificial strawberry flavor. Question asked. Why didn't you come when we were babies? Answer given. I didn't know. I should have listened to your mother. I closed the notebook. My hand shook once. Not because I forgave him, but because he had actually written that sentence down. Julian saw it. I know it's not enough. No. I know it. You're just learning it. His eyes met mine. I am starting to learn it. I wanted to punish that sentence. Starting 5 years late. How convenient. But the truth was the truth. Starting was better than denying. What do you want? I asked. He looked around the kitchen. The pickup racks. The menu board. I want to know them. I want to pay child support. I want to understand exactly what happened. I want to know what my mother did. I want. He stopped. What? His voice dropped. I want to stop imagining 3 cribs I never got to see. That pierced right through me. I looked away. The industrial oven timer beeped. Blair moved to pull the trays out, giving me privacy without actually leaving the room. Julian spoke again. I'm not asking to take them away. I'm not asking to change their last names. I'm not asking you to make this easy on me. It should be impossible. I nodded. Then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Audra. I saw the name. Blair saw it too. He declined the call. My expression must have shifted because he said, The engagement is under review. Under review. You haven't broken it off. Not yet. Then do not bring your half measures anywhere near my children. His jaw clenched. It isn't simple. It is exactly simple. It might be painful, it might be expensive, it might be public. But simple and easy are not the same thing. He looked down at the box. She says she didn't know. About what? The pregnancy? I let out a harsh laugh. She signed the FedEx package. She claims she didn't open it. Then she texted me later saying she knew enough. He stared at me. You have that text? Yes. Can I see it? No. He flinched. My evidence goes through the lawyers, I said. You don't get emotional previews just because you're finally curious. He swallowed that, barely. At the door, he stopped. The kids know. About the DNA. Yes. I couldn't be there when you told them. No. Pain crossed his face. I didn't soften. They need a stable parent for that conversation, I said. You are not stable for them yet. He left without arguing. That was new, too. That night, I told the kids. Not everything, just the truth tailored to their size. The test says Julian is your biological father, I said. Beckett whispered. The body dad. Yes. Harper hugged her bunny tighter. Does that mean we have to go live with him? No. Declan said. Does he know about the arugula? Not yet. Then he isn't ready. Despite myself, I smiled. No, I said. He isn't ready, but he is learning, Beckett asked. Can he learn about the pancakes? Maybe. Harper looked at me carefully. Are you sad? Children can split you right down the middle with one tiny question. Yes, I said. A little. Because he came back? Because he missed things he shouldn't have missed. Declan leaned against my side. We don't miss him because we didn't know him. That's true. But now, maybe we will miss him later. That's also true. We sat with that. No neat answers. Just the beginning of a new kind of honesty. After they fell asleep, Diane called. Audra's attorney contacted me. She wants to be explicitly excluded from any narrative involving the children. I looked at the notebooks Julian had left on the counter. She should have thought of that before Laura. Diane hummed. My thoughts exactly, but billable. Also, we found something. The anonymous domain that contacted Page 6 2 hours ago was registered through a PR vendor used by Audra's foundation team. My stomach dropped. What did they send? It hasn't published yet. Headline: Billionaire heir has secret triplets hidden by ex for financial gain. I closed my eyes tightly. The kids were asleep in the next room, safe for the moment. But outside, the story had started hunting them. Diane, I said. I know, she replied. Now, we fight in public. Nurse Maya Brooks remembered the sound of my shoes. That was the first thing she said. Not my face. Not Eleanor Sterling. Not Audra. My shoes. We met in the hospital cafeteria under harsh fluorescent lights, sitting in chairs designed to discourage grief from lingering too long. Maya wore navy scrubs under a gray fleece and had shorter hair than I remembered. She had been the night shift nurse when I was admitted at 10 weeks pregnant. I remembered her as the only person who actually looked me in the eye when everyone else was staring at my chart. You paced, she said. Soft shoes. A little squeak every time you turned near the nurse's station. You had one hand on your stomach and one hand on your phone. I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. I was trying to reach him. I know. The words almost wrecked me. I had spent years knowing I had tried. Still, hearing someone else say it out loud mattered more than I expected. Diane sat next to me with a legal pad. Miss Brooks, thank you for meeting us. We understand you have concerns about hospital confidentiality. HIPAA. Maya nodded. I do. I can't hand over protected records without a subpoena. But I can tell you what I personally witnessed, and if I'm properly deposed, I will answer. Her voice trembled slightly, but it held firm. I asked, why now? Maya looked at me. Because I saw the tabloid headline this morning. My stomach tightened. The Page 6 exclusive had dropped at 7:08 a.m. Billionaire Julian Sterling. Linked to secret triplets raised by ex-wife. They had blurred the kids' faces because Diane threatened them with fire and brimstone within minutes, but the damage was done. The article used phrases like hidden heirs, financial leverage, and dramatic restaurant showdown. It didn't name Audra as the source. It didn't have to. It had her fingerprints all over it. They made it sound like you planned it. Maya continued. You didn't. I remember you crying because no one would put your call through. I stared at the table. What happened that night? Diane asked gently. Maya took a breath. You came in bleeding. Dr. Cho ordered observation. You kept asking for your husband. You called him multiple times around 11:30 p.m. Mrs. Sterling, his mother, arrived with a lawyer. She demanded Oh. Was uncomfortable. But the lawyer had documentation claiming family representation. I thought it was strange because you kept saying you wanted your husband, not his mother. I remembered the smell of antiseptic, the cold blood pressure cuff, Eleanor's icy hand on the bed rail. Maya paused. Another woman arrived later. Blonde. Expensive coat. Audra, I said. Yes. She stayed near the hallway. She had your cell phone for a while. Diane's pen stopped. She had Sloane's phone? Maya nodded slowly. Mrs. Sterling said they needed to keep your stress down. The phone was on the rolling tray. The blonde woman picked it up when it started buzzing. I remember because I assumed it was family. My mouth went completely dry. Was it Julian? I asked. Maya's eyes softened. I don't know. But the phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and walked out into the hallway. The room tilted. For years, I had believed he never called. Maybe he did. Maybe once. Maybe too late. Maybe not enough. But Audra had touched the phone. Diane asked, "Did you document any of this?" I made a note after discharge because I felt uneasy. Not in the official medical chart, a personal memo to my nursing supervisor regarding concerns about family interference. Does it still exist? I don't know. Hospital risk management might have it. Who can request it? Through a legal subpoena. Diane smiled, a very small, terrifying smile. We love a subpoena. Maya turned back to me. I'm sorry I didn't do more. I had heard that phrase often from people who stood near power and survived by treading carefully. I understood it. Still, it hurt. You were kind to me, I said. That mattered. Her eyes filled with tears. Dr. Evelyn Cho met us in the medical records department an hour later. She looked older, thinner, and guilty before she even spoke. Sloane, she said. I should have called you years ago. Yes, I said. Not cruelly, just precisely. She flinched. Diane handled the formalities. Doctor, Cho confirmed my pregnancy was never documented as lost. There was a concern for a threatened miscarriage. Not an actual one. She had never told Julian that I lost the pregnancy. However, she had signed a discharge summary that was later amended by another administrative doctor, noting patient distress following marital separation and reported uncertainty regarding pregnancy. Reported by whom? Diane asked. Dr. Cho looked down. Family representative. Eleanor Sterling. I see. Not Sloane, correct? Correct. There it was. A medical shadow cast by someone else. Doctor. Cho agreed to draft a letter of correction stating the pregnancy was ongoing at the time of discharge, and any suggestion of a confirmed miscarriage was medically inaccurate. She didn't look at me while she signed it. I let her suffer her shame in silence. My phone buzzed. Julian. The headline didn't come from me. I replied for the first time since the DNA results. It came from someone close enough to know the restaurant. His response came fast. I am looking into it. I typed, look faster. My children were photographed near their school. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. Then, I will handle it. I stared at those words. The old Julian believed handling things meant controlling them. I replied, you will coordinate through Diane. You do not handle my children. No reply. At 4 p.m., Diane received confirmation that Julian's legal team had issued a threat to the publication, demanding the removal of identifying details and warning against publishing images of the minors. He also issued a brief statement through his PR firm, the privacy of the minors must be respected. Any attempt to harass, photograph, identify, or exploit them will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. No denial, no claims, no mention of me. It was the first public move he made that didn't make things worse. At 5 p.m., Audra posted a photo of herself at a charity office with the caption, Children deserve stable families, not secrets. I sent it to Diane. Diane replied, she is begging to be deposed in good lighting. That afternoon, Julian came to the Queen's storefront again. This time, he didn't come inside. He waited on the sidewalk until Blair asked if I wanted him chased off with a broom. I walked to the glass door. What? I asked. He looked over my shoulder toward the kitchen, where my staff was packing up school lunches. I spoke to my mother. She says she genuinely believed the pregnancy was no longer viable. Convenient. She says you refused further contact. False. I know that now. The words landed softly. They weren't enough. But they weren't nothing either. He held out a manila folder. I didn't take it. What is that? Archived phone records from my security office. From the night in the hospital. There was one outgoing call from my phone to yours at 1:16 a.m. It connected for 12 seconds. My heart stopped. I had no memory of that because Audra had my phone, because I was asleep, because someone answered. Who answered? I asked. His face was grim. I don't know. But I heard breathing. And then the call ended. When I called back, it went straight to voicemail. I gripped the doorframe, Audra in the hallway, my phone in her hand. A 12-second call. 5 years of silence. I want the full log, I said. Will you hand it over? Through Diane. Yes. He lowered the folder. I am starting to see the shape of what they did to you. Julian, I said. You're seeing the outline. I lived inside it. He bowed his head once. Not an apology, but an acknowledgement. Behind him, a car door opened. Audra stepped onto the sidewalk. Of course, she was wearing sunglasses despite the overcast afternoon. Julian's voice went sharp. We need to talk. I let out a single laugh. They both looked at me. No, I said. You need to talk to your lawyers. Then I closed the door to the shop and locked it. Audra put together a slideshow about my children. Not with their faces, she was too careful for that. Silhouettes. 3 little figures holding hands under the title, The Sterling Children's Initiative, Nutrition, Legacy, and Future. Diane and I sat in the boardroom of the Sterling Foundation while Audra presented with a smile sharp enough to cut ribbons. I hadn't wanted to attend. Then Harrison Sterling called me personally. Harrison was Julian's uncle, a board member, and the only Sterling who sent a handwritten note when my mother passed away. It read simply, Grief makes rooms feel strange. Eat something warm. I remembered it because everyone else sent massive, impersonal lilies. Sloan, he had said on the phone. Your company's name is being discussed in relation to a child nutrition program. I believe you should hear it directly. So I went. Not alone. Diane sat beside me. Blair sat directly behind us, pretending she wasn't mentally setting the room on fire. Julian sat across the table. His expression completely closed off. Eleanor sat at the head of the long mahogany table, dressed in winter white and moral authority. Audra stood near the screen like she belonged to the future she had designed. Our goal, Audra said smoothly, is to support children whose identities place them under unusual public scrutiny. I almost laughed out loud. She had helped create that scrutiny. Nutrition, security, education, emotional stability. Audra continued. The Sterling Foundation has the resources to build a comprehensive support model. The first slide showed a luxury private school campus. The second showed concierge pediatricians. The third proposed a media privacy fund. The fourth showed family integration events. Diane's pen stopped on that one. Julian stared at the slide, then at Audra. Good. He hadn't seen this in advance. Audra kept going. Of course, any partnership with external food providers would need to meet Sterling standards. The Little Harbor Kitchen is charming, but scaling requires governance. The foundation could absorb the brand within a larger framework. There it was. Absorb. Not partner. Not support. Consume. Diane leaned toward me. Breathe. I barely was. Harrison Sterling tapped his pen against the table. Audra. Who authorized the use of children's silhouettes? Audra smiled tightly. They're generic. They are, I said. 3 children in a presentation about Julian's children. Don't insult the room. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. Sloan, we are discussing protection. No, you are discussing control. just using prettier fonts. Julian's mouth twitched. Audra's smile strained. This is exactly why a professional structure is needed. Emotion cannot guide children in this position. The position created by the anonymous leak from your foundation's PR vendor? The room went freezing cold. Audra blinked rapidly. Julian turned entirely to face her. Eleanor spoke first. What leak? Diane slid a folder across the polished wood. We have preliminary tracking data, linking the information sent to page 6 to a PR vendor utilized by Miss Kensington's project team. We are not making formal accusations at this table. Yet. Harrison leaned back in his leather chair. That sounds quite formal. Audra's voice rose. This is absurd. Sloane is trying to turn everyone against me because she knows biology changes everything. I stood up. No. Biology didn't change who packed the lunches. Biology didn't wake up at 3 a.m. when Beckett had croup. Biology didn't teach Harper to breathe through panic. Biology didn't hold Declan after the restaurant because he threw up from fear. Biology is information. Parenting is behavior. Julian looked down at his hands. Eleanor's mouth pressed into a thin line. Audra's eyes flashed. And yet, you kept them from their father. Julian spoke softly. Audra. She ignored him. You want to talk about behavior? You hid 3 children for 5 years. Diane started to rise. I touched her wrist. Not yet. I looked directly at Audra. You signed for the FedEx package I sent to Julian's office. Her face changed. Barely enough to notice, but enough. What package? Eleanor demanded. Julian stared intensely at Audra. Audra swallowed. I signed for a lot of things. I was his office contact. That doesn't mean I opened his personal mail. The package with my ultrasound and my letter, I said. The delivery receipt has your signature. That doesn't prove anything. Then why did you text me 3 days later telling me he already knew enough? Julian's chair scraped against the floor. Harrison whispered. Good God. Eleanor's eyes darted toward Audra for the first time. They were not allies. Audra lifted her chin. You were unstable. Everyone knew it. That's not an answer. It's a deflection. It's the truth. Whose truth? Yours? Eleanor's? Julian's old truth? Not mine. Harrison turned to Julian. Did you know anything about this courier package? No, Julian said. His voice was dangerously quiet. Audra looked at him, pleading. Julian, you were dealing with the Tokyo merger. The board. Your father's stroke scare. You needed a clean break. She went silent. There it was. It wasn't a full confession, but the room heard the empty space where a denial should have been. Eleanor stood up. This meeting is losing focus. No, Harrison said. It is finally gaining it. I looked at him in surprise. He didn't look away. Audra snapped her laptop shut. I will not sit here and be interrogated by a woman using children as bargaining chips. Diane stood up this time. Then sit for a sworn deposition later. Audra flushed bright red. Julian stood up too. Enough. He looked around the room. The foundation will not use the likeness, number, status, or implied identity of the children in any program. The Little Harbor Kitchen will not be absorbed, contacted, or referenced without Sloane's written consent. Eleanor snapped. Julian. He turned on his mother. No. One word. Late, but still deeply satisfying. Eleanor looked as though he had ripped the family crest off the wall and slapped her with it. Audra gathered her papers with shaking hands. As she passed me, she leaned in close. You think this makes you safe? She hissed. You have no idea what this world does to women who embarrass it. I kept my face perfectly blank. My children are not your ladder, I said. Her eyes burned. She walked out. That night at home, Harper asked why I looked tired. Grown-up meeting, I said. Did they move the pillow fort without permission? Declan asked. Worse. Beckett patted my hand. Can you find them? I laughed. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A screenshot of an anonymous draft email. Subject: Billionaire heir's secret triplets hidden by X. Attachment preview. A photo of the outside of the kids' elementary school. My blood ran cold. Audra had walked out of the boardroom angry. Now she was going after the kids' daily routine. The first paparazzi photographer appeared outside the elementary school at 8:07 a.m. He was pretending to photograph the brick church across the street. Nobody photographs that church. It is square, aggressively beige, and architecturally offensive. I saw him before the kids did. Blair, walking beside me, followed my gaze and muttered a very unschool-appropriate word. Run, we both thought, turning around. The triplets noticed immediately. Wrong way, Beckett said. We forgot something, I lied smoothly. Harper's hand tightened in mine. Declan looked over his shoulder and saw the camera coming down too late. His face went pale. Mommy A black Escalade pulled up so fast the tires scraped the curb. For one wild, terrifying second, I thought Sterling's security had come to take them. Then Julian got out. No suit jacket, no tie, just a dark, unbuttoned overcoat and a face like a thunderstorm. He stepped directly between the photographer and us. Walk away, man. The photographer held up both hands. Public sidewalk. Julian's voice dropped an octave. Are you photographing minors out? The school? Vi. I. Fi. 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 Now? The photographer smirked. Confirming they're yours, Mr. Sterling? Julian took a step closer. Julian, I warned sharply. He stopped. Good. Violence would give the story teeth. Diane had taught me that. Life had taught me that. Julian pulled out his phone and photographed the photographer, his camera, his face, his license plate down the block. You will hear from my legal team in exactly 20 minutes. The man hesitated. Another parent walked by, glaring. Then the school security guard stepped out. The photographer finally turned and left. But the damage had already entered Declan's body. He spun around and sprinted back toward the school courtyard. Declan, I called out. Julian moved like he was going to chase him. I snapped. No! He froze. Blair ran after Declan because she was closer. I kept Harper and Beckett tight to my sides until the school staff ushered us inside through the side entrance. We found Declan in the supply closet behind the art room, his knees pulled tight to his chest next to stacks of construction paper. He wouldn't come out for Julian. Of course he wouldn't. Julian stood in the hallway looking like a man staring at the wreckage of a car crash he caused. I crawled into the closet. It smelled like wax crayons and dust. Hey, Space Judge, I whispered. Declan buried his face in his knees. I hate cameras. I know. He's going to take pictures every day. No, he's not. You don't know that. He was right. I sat down next to him in the cramped space, my hip pressing against a box of glue sticks. We're going to make more rules, I said. Grown-up rules. Legal rules. Can you find them? Yes. We can find them. Not for being rude. For breaking the big rules. He lifted his head. Can you make the man stop being famous? I closed my eyes. No. Can you make us stop being his? The question broke me. Carefully. Not loudly. Children can break you with absolute precision. I pulled him into my arms. You are mine, I said. And you belong to yourselves. Biology does not make you less safe with me. He cried then, not a tantrum. But the heavy, exhausted tears of a 5-year-old whose world had suddenly become too visible. Julian heard some of it from the hallway when I finally carried Declan out. Julian's face was gray. I'm sorry, Declan mumbled, hiding his face in my shoulder. Not to Julian. To me. Julian knelt down, keeping a respectful distance, his hands still. Declan said in a raspy voice, "I'm sorry my world scared you." Julian didn't answer. That was allowed. By noon, Diane had filed emergency injunctions and sent cease and desist letters to the tabloid, the photographer, and the PR firm. Julian's legal team joined the motion instead of fighting it. That mattered. At 1 p.m., the article was updated, removing all references to the school. At 2 p.m., Audra posted absolutely nothing. Silence can also be evidence. At 3 p.m., Harrison Sterling called me. "I have enough to convene an emergency review of the foundation board," he said. "The PR vendor contract?" Audra's assistant authorized the media contact yesterday. The subject line references family narrative strategy. I closed my eyes. "Send it to Diane." "Already done." Harrison paused. "Sloan, I failed you 5 years ago, too." "I hadn't expected that." "You weren't there," I said. "That is a form of failure in this family." He had no answer for that. Neither did I. At 4 p.m., Julian came to the storefront with Diane's permission. He stood in the prep area while the staff labeled snack boxes. "I fired the PR firm," he said. "You can't fire Audra's decisions. You haven't broken the engagement." He finally looked at me. "I have now." The words hung in the air. I didn't feel anything close to victory. Maybe because it wasn't about me. "Why?" I asked. He seemed surprised. "Because she lied." "Because she lied before?" "Because she put the kids in danger." There it was. That was the answer. Not me. The kids. Good. He was learning where the correct center was. "She says she was protecting me," he added bitterly. "They always say that." He looked down. "My mother wants a family meeting." I let out a harsh laugh that startled us both. "Your mother wants control." "Yes. At least say it correctly." He met my eyes. "My mother wants control. I want the truth. Those things might not be compatible." "I know." We stood amid stacks of labeled lunch containers, turkey and apple roll-ups, oatmeal bites, sweet potato cups, small, real things. Julian looked around. "You built all of this? With 3 babies?" "Yes. I don't know how you did it. By waking up. By not dying. By accepting help from people who didn't make the help feel like a debt. By choosing tomorrow when tomorrow felt incredibly rude for showing up anyway. I couldn't afford the luxury of not knowing how." He absorbed that. Then he said, "Sloan, come to the family meeting. Bring Diane. Let my mother speak where she can be recorded." I studied him carefully. "You want to trap her?" "I want to stop being managed by half-truths." "That isn't the same as protecting us." "No. But it might help." I thought of Declan in the supply closet. I thought of Eleanor's crest on the photo albums. I thought of Audra's presentation. "Fine," I said. "A meeting. No kids. No decisions." He nodded. At the door, he stopped. "He asked you if he could stop being mine." Declan did. "Yes." Julian closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. He left without another word. That was the first time I believed his pain might become useful. Not to me. To them. Eleanor Sterling held family meetings in rooms, designed to make the word no feel like bad manners. The Sterling Foundation boardroom was on the 42nd floor of a glass tower overlooking all of Manhattan. Dark wood table, cream walls, art expensive enough to look casual, water glasses placed at mathematically equal intervals by invisible staff. I arrived with Diane. No kids. No Blair, though she had offered to come with a rolling pin in her purse. Julian stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. Harrison sat at the far end with a thick folder. Eleanor occupied the head of the table, as if the chair had grown around her spine. Audra was absent. Her absence had the distinct shape of a recent defeat. Eleanor looked at me and didn't stand. "Sloan." "Eleanor." Her mouth tightened at the lack of title. Good. Diane placed a digital recorder on the table. As agreed, this meeting is being recorded. No terms regarding custody, last names, trusts, visitation, or media will be settled today. Any proposals must go through legal representation. Eleanor looked at Julian. Is this necessary? Yes, he said. She shrank slightly. One word from him mattered more to her than 10 binders from me. I hated that. I used it anyway. Eleanor folded her hands. We all want what is best for the children. No, I said. We don't all agree on what the children are. Her eyes sharpened. Excuse me? Mine are not heirs first. Not brand assets. Not redemption symbols. Not proof of lineage. They are children. Harrison's mouth twitched. Eleanor ignored him. They are Sterling's. They are Sullivan's. They are Julian's. They are themselves. Julian looked at me when I said that. Eleanor slid a polished folder forward. Diane intercepted it. Proposal? Diane asked. Framework, Eleanor corrected. Diane opened it. Her eyebrows rose. I read over her shoulder. Change of last names to Sterling Sullivan in 90 days. Educational trust, managed by Foundation trustees. Residential security evaluation by Sterling Detail. Media privacy under Foundation management. Regular family integration events. Grandparent access schedule. Public statement acknowledging Sterling family support. Non-disclosure regarding past misunderstandings. Non-disparagement clause regarding Audra Kensington, Eleanor Sterling, or the Sterling Group. I laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. Eleanor's face hardened. Stability is not amusing. I find hostage negotiations in designer suits very amusing. Julian reached for the folder. Diane handed it to him. He scanned it quickly. His expression moved from irritation to cold fury. Mother, he said. Eleanor lifted her chin. These children need protection. They need protection from this. His eyes flashed. Not from Sloane. Stop treating her like the enemy. The Sloane from 5 years ago would have looked down. The Sloane of today opened her own binder. Let's talk about enemies. I placed the hospital visitor log on the table. Eleanor's gaze dropped to it. Then the FedEx receipt, signed by Audra. Then the rejected wire transfer confirmation. Then Audra's text message. Then the discharge summary with the shady reported uncertainty note. Julian went entirely still. I looked at Eleanor. In the hospital, you told me Julian knew. She said nothing. You told me he thought I was manipulating him. Silence. You brought a corporate lawyer to the door of my room while I was bleeding. Her jaw shifted. Diane asked. Mrs. Sterling, did you know Sloane was pregnant when you initiated legal pressure at the hospital? Eleanor looked at Julian. He offered her no lifeline. Yes, she said. The word moved through the room like a drawn blade. Julian's face changed. He had known, but hearing it said out loud in front of him mattered. Diane continued. Did you know the pregnancy was viable when Sloane was discharged? Eleanor narrowed her eyes. The doctors said it was uncertain. Not lost, Diane corrected. Eleanor didn't answer. Harrison spoke up. Eleanor. She snapped at him. Stay out of this. No. The room froze. Harrison leaned forward. For once? No. Julian's voice was a rough whisper. Mother, you told me she miscarried. Eleanor closed her eyes for a fraction of a second. I told you what was necessary to stop her from destroying your life. That was all. The confession didn't arrive wearing guilt. It arrived wearing justification. Julian recoiled as if she had struck him. My life, he repeated numbly. She was unstable. You were under immense pressure. Audra was suitable. The board was watching. Your father had just had a stroke. You needed a clean break. I needed the truth. You decided you needed protection from my children. Eleanor's face twisted. I felt nothing of the sort. I felt nothing that surprised me. For years, I had imagined confronting Eleanor would set me on fire. Instead, she looked incredibly small at the center of her expensive room, surrounded by the consequences of believing money turned cruelty into administration. I was 27, I said. I was pregnant with 3 babies, and I was alone in a hospital bed. You weren't protecting anyone. You were erasing me. Eleanor looked at me with her usual disdain. You would have used them, wouldn't you? You are describing yourself, I said softly. Harrison inhaled sharply. Julian sat down slowly. Diane asked, Did you instruct anyone to intercept Sloane's communications? Eleanor smoothed her skirt. I instructed staff to route harassment through legal channels. Did you tell Julian that Sloane had tried to contact him? No. Julian closed his eyes. There it was. A missing bridge, finally named. Eleanor straightened up. I will not apologize for preserving this family. I gathered my documents. Good, I said. That surprised her. I do not need an apology from someone who still calls, causing damage. Preservation. Julian looked up. I turned to him. You asked for the truth. You have some of it. What you do with it is up to you. Then I looked at Harrison. My children's last names will remain Sullivan. Any trust will be entirely independent. No foundation control. No public statements using them. No grandparent access without a therapeutic recommendation, and my explicit consent. Eleanor stood up. You cannot cut me off. They are my blood. I can. They are my children. Her face went mottled red. Julian said, Mother, sit down. She glared at him. He repeated, Sit down. She did. For the first time since I had known her, Eleanor Sterling obeyed someone else's order in her own boardroom. It didn't heal anything. Still, it was deeply satisfying. As Diane and I left, Julian followed us to the elevator banks. Sloane. I stopped. His voice sounded ruined. I am sorry. This time, the words had actual weight. I looked at him. I'm sorry couldn't hand back 5 birthdays. I'm sorry couldn't erase Declan in a supply closet. I'm sorry couldn't turn me back into the woman I might have been if I had been believed. I hear you, I said. Pain crossed his face. He wanted forgiveness. I gave him acknowledgement. That was all I had. The elevator doors opened. Before stepping inside, I said, If you want the rest of the truth, go back to Lawara. He frowned. Why? Because Audra started her current narrative there. She can finish it there. Diane smiled a very small smile beside me. The doors closed. Laura looked different when I walked in without my kids. Same amber light, same white tablecloths, same fine glassware, same low hum of expensive conversations. But this time, I wasn't sitting at a table for 4. I stood near the kitchen entrance with a binder in one hand and the future owner of my company standing beside me. Chef Marcus had turned the evening into a private fundraising event for child nutrition access. It wasn't entirely public, no press inside without consent, no photographing children, no displaying family identities. The guest list included private school heads, clinic directors, foundation donors, and a few carefully selected board members from the Sterling Foundation, because Harrison made sure the right people saw the right things. The Little Harbor Kitchen was presenting the pilot menu. I should have been stressed. Instead, I watched the entrance. Blair stood by the tasting table, wearing all black and looking entirely capable of poisoning someone with a gluten-free muffin if necessary. Diane stood by the side wall with Harrison. Nurse Maya and Dr. Cho were seated at a private table near the back, both visibly nervous. Julian arrived alone. Good. Then Audra arrived. Of course she did. Wearing white. Not bridal white, strategic white. Innocent white. Soft waves. Delicate earrings. pale lipstick, wounded eyes. Beside her was a PR consultant I recognized from Diane's dossier, bold or desperate. Julian turned when she walked in. His face went stone cold. "Audra," he said. She smiled sadly. "I was invited." Harrison stepped forward. "You were not." She held up her phone. "I received a general donor invite from the foundation list. Unless you are publicly excluding me now," nearby donors noticed. There was her gamble. Make the exclusion look cruel. Force Julian to protect his public image. Turn herself into the woman being pushed aside by the secret ex-wife. I walked toward her before Julian could speak. "Sloane," Diane warned softly. I ignored her. Audra's eyes flicked to my binder. Still carrying paperwork everywhere? Only when people keep lying in rooms with chandeliers. Her smile tightened. "This is a charity dinner. Maybe think about the children." "I do." Constantly. She glanced around, ensuring we had an audience. "Then maybe stop using them to punish everyone who was part of Julian's life when you walked out." The room quieted around us. Julian stepped forward. "Audra." "Stop." She turned to him, eyes shining. "I haven't said a word while she paints me as a villain. I loved you. I stood by you when she vanished. I watched you grieve a marriage she abandoned. Now she shows up with 3 kids, and everyone acts like I'm the problem. It was a brilliant performance. I might have admired it if my children weren't the props behind it." I looked at Diane. She nodded once. "Not permission. Readiness." I turned to the room. "Since Miss Kensington has decided to debate private matters at a child nutrition event, we will correct the record as briefly as possible, without identifying the minors." Audra's face slipped. She had expected shame, not bureaucracy. Marcus quietly closed the main dining room doors. Harrison addressed the room. "This debate concerns foundation governance and false media sources. Guests who prefer not to stay may move to the bar area. Please, no recording." Several people stayed. Enough of them. Diane stepped forward. "We will not debate the personal details of the minors. We will debate whether Mrs. Sullivan attempted to notify Mr. Sterling years ago, and whether recent media leaks originated from parties connected to Miss Lizo Kensington." Audra hissed. "This is insane." Julian looked at her. "Then it should be easy." That silenced her. I placed the first document on a side table. The FedEx receipt signed by A. Kensington. "The package containing my ultrasound," I said, "sent to Julian's office after I was locked out." Audra's lips parted. "I signed for the mail," she said. "I didn't open it." Diane placed the text message next to it. "Sloane. He knows enough. Stop making this so cruel. He is grieving the marriage, too." Audra swallowed hard. Julian stared at the printed text message, as if it had reached across 5 years and grabbed him by the throat. I placed the hospital visitor log down next. Eleanor Sterling. Audra Kensington. No Julian Sterling. Nurse Maya stood up, her hands trembling but her posture straight. "I was the attending nurse," she said. The patient asked repeatedly for her husband. She called him from triage. Her cell phone was handled by Miss Tade on my DNC. Kensington in the hallway during a ringing call. Audra snapped. "You cannot prove what I saw." Dr. Cho stood up next. "The pregnancy was viable at the time of discharge," she said firmly. "Any subsequent suggestion that a miscarriage was confirmed was medically inaccurate." The room stayed perfectly still. Then Harrison set down the final folder. "Regarding the recent media leak," he said in his formal board voice, "the Foundation's review found contacts from a PR vendor linked to Miss Kensington's project team. The communication referenced a family narrative strategy involving Mr. Sterling's minor children. The vendor's contract has been terminated. The board will review the governance failures." Audra looked at Julian. "Say something," she whispered. He did. "You leaked them." Her eyes filled with real tears now. That's not fair. Did you? I was protecting us. The words echoed. Us. Not the children. Not the truth. Us. Julian's face closed completely. There is no us. The room absorbed it. Audra went pale. Julian. No. The word was quiet. Final. Her gaze shifted to me. Hate. Fear. Humiliation. Do you think you won? She spat. No, I said. I think my children won't be used in your press strategy. She let out a broken half laugh. Do you think he's going to choose you now? Julian flinched. I looked at him. Then I looked back at her. I am not available to be chosen. That sentence did exactly what I needed it to do. It removed the prize from the game. Audra's face collapsed, not just from heartbreak, but from losing the narrative where my life existed solely to validate hers. She walked out, the PR consultant trailing behind her. Nobody stopped them. Eleanor didn't attend the dinner, but her absence didn't save her. Harrison announced that the Sterling Foundation would suspend Eleanor's directive authority pending a governance review of family-related projects. The room responded with the polite surprise of wealthy people watching power shift without raising their voices. Julian stayed near the side table, staring down at the documents. The same restaurant, the same golden light. But now, he wasn't looking at the children he had missed. He was looking at the exact path that had kept him away from them. After the formal portion, Marcus served dinner, because even emotional implosions require catering. People approached me carefully. A private school director squeezed my hand. A pediatric ENT asked about the expansion of our allergy-friendly meals. Harrison apologized without trying to make it about himself. Maya cried in the restroom, and Blair went with her to offer tissues and fierce validation. Julian waited until I stepped outside near the back entrance. The night air smelled like rain and roasted garlic. Sloane. I turned. His eyes were red. I believed her, he said. I didn't believe you. There was no defense in it. No because, no but. Just the wound named correctly. I leaned against the brick wall. Yes. He swallowed hard. I need to say this without asking for anything back. I am sorry about the hospital. About the calls. About believing my mother. About trusting Audra. About thinking money informed me of everything. I am sorry for every year you had to scrape by because I was too proud to question the story that protected me. The apology was late. Still, it was the one he owed me. My eyes burned. I let it land. I needed that 5 years ago. I said. I know. You don't. But maybe someday you'll understand it enough to be useful to them. He nodded. I will. Do you hate me? He asked. I looked at him. The man I married. The stranger who divorced me. The father of my children. The billionaire who froze in a restaurant because the past finally had a face. No, I said. I don't hate you. Hope flickered in his eyes. I cut it off gently. I also don't love you in a way that can ever become a marriage again. His face shifted. Pain and acceptance fighting against disbelief. Julian, you can become their father if you do the work. You cannot become my husband again because regret is not a time machine. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, he nodded once. I understand. Not yet, I thought. But you might. Behind us, inside the restaurant, applause rose for the child nutrition program. No children on display. No airs. No silhouettes. Just food, work, and a future I had built entirely without him. The first official visitation took place in Astoria Park with Dr. Medina, 2 lawyers standing nearby, and a safety plan so detailed it made Declan ask if we were invading something. No, I told him. We are going to the park with lawyers. Some parks need paperwork. He stated seriously. He accepted that because Declan respected procedure. Julian arrived early. Dr. Medina noted it. I did too. He stood near a bench. No gifts, no balloons, no photographers, no sterling crest, no grandmother. He wore jeans and a sweater, looking profoundly uncomfortable without his armor of power. Good. The kids stayed close to me at first. Harper hugged her bunny. Beckett carried a notebook of questions. Declan brought a magnifying glass, because if Julian was a dragon, there might be clues. Julian crouched down when they approached. Not too close. Hi, Beckett said. He opened his notebook. Do you know our favorite shape for pancakes? Shields, Julian said. Beckett checked the notebook. Correct, Harper asked. Do you know Declan hates arugula? I have been warned. Declan narrowed his eyes. By who? Mommy's paperwork? Julian looked at me. Well, Dr. Medina smiled. I stood a few feet away with Diane. Julian didn't try to pull the kids out of my orbit. He answered questions. He didn't interrupt. He asked permission before showing them a photo of himself as a little boy. Declan studied the picture through his magnifying glass. You looked like Beckett. Beckett leaned in. I don't make that face. You do, Harper said. Julian laughed quietly. The sound reached me and ached in a strange, distant way. Not because I wanted him back, because the kids deserved harmless laughter early on. Julian looked at me after he laughed, almost as if asking permission to continue existing in that moment. I kept my face neutral. Let him learn to stand without my constant absolution. After 30 minutes, Harper asked if he knew any stories. He froze. Then he said, I know one about a boy who thought he owned a dragon. Declan perked up. The boy was wrong, Julian said. The dragon owned itself. Declan considered this. Good start. Julian looked immensely relieved. The visit lasted 45 minutes. At the end, he didn't ask for hugs. Beckett offered him a high five. Harper waved. Declan said, You can come back if the paperwork says so. Julian's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't cry in front of them. Good. Later, after filing the settlement agreement in family court, we met in Diane's conference room to sign the logistics. Primary physical custody remained with me. Julian received supervised therapeutic visits, gradually stepping up to longer visits based on Dr. Medina's recommendations and the children's comfort. 0 overnight visits for at least 12 months. 0 contact with Eleanor without written therapeutic recommendation and my consent. 0 contact with Audra, ever. No public identification. No social media. No name changes. An independent savings trust for health and education with a neutral trustee. Child support calculated and paid through formal channels. No random gifts. Julian signed every page. His lawyer looked relieved. Diane watched suspiciously, which was her natural resting state. When the trust clause came up, Julian said, I want it to be large enough that they never feel limited. I replied, I want it structured so nobody can ever use it to steer their lives. He accepted that. That word from him still startled me. After the signing, he asked for 5 minutes with me in the conference room. Diane said, Door open. Julian agreed. Of course. We stood by the window watching the Manhattan traffic. I sold the penthouse Audra picked out, he said. I looked at him. Why are you telling me? I don't know. Yes, you do. He gave a sad half smile. I wanted you to know I'm clearing things out. Julian, I know. Clearing things out doesn't reopen anything. Right. He looked at his hands. My mother wants to write to you. No. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. I expected that. She can write to her therapist. That pulled a 1-second laugh out of me. For a moment, we were almost who we used to be. Then the moment passed. He said, She keeps saying she was protecting the family. Families like ours use protection like a locked door. I know that now. You know a lot of things now. Too late. Yes. He accepted the answer without arguing. Another new thing. I went to the hospital, he said quietly. I stood in the hallway outside triage. Nurse Brooks met me. She showed me where you paced. I looked out the window because I didn't want him to see my face. I tried to imagine it, he said. You couldn't. No. I tried to imagine 3 newborns. Don't. I turned back to him. You don't have the right to use imaginary babies to suffer nobly. If you want to know them, know the children they are right now. He absorbed that. You're right. I know. Another faint smile. Sadder this time. At the door, he asked the question I knew was coming. Is there any version of this where you and I start over? I closed my eyes. Not because I was tempted, but because the answer deserved to be given without cruelty. No. His face caved inward. I continued. There might be a version where you become safe enough for them. There might be birthdays where you stand on the other side of the room and we both clap. There might be school plays where you arrive on time and leave without making it about you. There might be graduations where they choose who sits where. But there is no version where I return to a marriage built on the premise that I wasn't believed. He nodded slowly. I understand. Not yet, I thought. But you might. That night, the kids asked if Julian could come to Pancake Saturday someday. Someday. Maybe, I said. With paperwork, Declan added. With paperwork, Beckett agreed. Can he bring blueberries? Yes, Harper said. He can sit in the chair that isn't Dad's. We don't have that chair. I pulled her close. Nobody has assigned chairs in this house. After they fell asleep, I stood in the kitchen and looked at the 3 toothbrushes by the sink. Pink, blue, green. Then I looked at the extra notebook Julian had left, now filled with his careful handwriting. I wasn't forgiving the past, but I was allowing the future to be something other than a punishment. For the kids. Not for him. The Little Harbor Kitchen opened its flagship storefront on a Saturday that smelled like rain and cinnamon. It wasn't a restaurant like Laura. No golden lights, no white tablecloths, no expensive silence. Our space had wide windows, sky blue walls, low shelves with children's books, clearly printed allergen labels, and a round table near the entrance with 4 chairs. Because the triplets insisted every important place needed Mommy's table, I let them pick the chair colors. Harper chose yellow. Beckett chose blue. Declan chose black. Because space is a color if you respect it. Mine was green. Blair cried when the sign went up. I pretended not to notice until she threatened, if you ignore my emotion, I will make a toast. So I hugged her quickly. Chef Marcus sent an arrangement of edible vegetable flowers, which horrified Declan and delighted Harper. Diane came with a stack of legal documents disguised in a gift bag because she said small businesses should celebrate with compliance. Harrison made a quiet donation to the school lunch fund with absolutely no sterling branding attached. Julian arrived at 10 a.m. with strawberries. He texted from outside first. We are here. Can I come in? For a second, my body tensed. Then I looked out the window and saw only Julian and his driver holding a box. No cameras, no crest, no entourage. I replied, yes. 10 minutes inside, no photos. He replied, understood. He walked in like a man who knew he had been permitted entry, not one who was welcome by right. That mattered. The kids saw him. Beckett ran up first, stopped halfway, and looked at me. I nodded. He high-fived Julian. Harper showed him the book corner. Declan made him inspect the menu board for arugula violations. Julian took it very seriously. There's arugula in the tomato soup, he noted. Declan looked at me, utterly betrayed. It's listed right there, Julian added quickly. Declan examined the board. Okay. Arugula with consent. Julian laughed out loud. My heart ached again, but less sharply now. Eleanor wasn't there. She had petitioned for grandmother access through the lawyers. Dr. Medina recommended no direct contact yet. The judge agreed. Eleanor sent 3 letters. Diane filed them away. I didn't read them. Maybe someday. Maybe never. Audra had vanished from the public Sterling orbit. The engagement ended quietly. Then loudly after a society reporter mentioned governance issues at the foundation. She moved to London for a consulting role, according to an article Blair sent me that I refused to open. Julian remained. Not as a husband, not as a rescuer, not as an owner. As a man learning how to arrive with permission. At 11 a.m., we cut the ribbon. Harper held one end. Beckett held the other. Declan held the scissors under my intense legal supervision. Blair counted down. 3, 2, 1. The ribbon fell. People clapped. The triplets cheered. For a split second, I saw Laura again. Julian frozen. Audra pale. My hand on Beckett's shoulder, the old fear rising like floodwater. Then the shop door opened. A family walked in asking for dairy-free muffins, and the present rushed back in. Work helps, not because it erases the pain, but because it gives your hands something honest to do. Julian stayed exactly 10 minutes. At minute 9, he stepped near the counter. "They look happy," he said. "Today they are. Thank you for letting me come." I let them decide. With Dr. Medina's guidance. I know. He looked at the round table. No assigned chairs. Smart, they insisted. His smile faded slightly. Sloane. Wait. I know I ask versions of this too often. I try to stop, but I need to say one last thing clearly. Say it. I will always regret not believing you. Not because regret earns anything it doesn't, but because I don't want silence to make it look smaller than it is. I looked at him. That was the kind of sentence a man only learns to build after he loses the right to an immediate answer. Good, I said. Pain crossed his face, but he accepted the scale of the response. He took a step back. Park visit Saturday at 3 p.m.? Yes. Dr. Medina's office. Bring the notebook. And blueberries. Ask Beckett. Beckett, listening from behind the pastry case, yelled, "Yes!" Julian smiled. Then he left. No dramatic goodbyes, no reaching out, no promises. Just a door opening and closing without taking me with him. That night, after the opening day crowd cleared out, the four of us sat at the round table. Harper ate noodle soup. Beckett arranged pretzel sticks like skyscrapers. Declan picked the arugula out of his mac and cheese and placed it in a consent pile. I ate a slice of quiche with one hand and reviewed tomorrow's prep list with the other. "Mommy," Harper said. Are we still Sullivans?" "Yes. Even if Julian is a Sterling." "Yes." Beckett looked up. "Can we be Sullivans and still know him?" "Yes." Declan asked. "Can he be a Sterling and still learn about pancakes?" "Yes." Harper smiled. "Okay." That was it. No grand speeches, no lineage ceremonies, just kids confirming they could have roots without being pulled out of the ground. After dinner, we walked toward the East River. The sky was violet, the water dark and moving fast. Harper held my hand. Beckett jumped over cracks in the sidewalk. Declan carried a paper bag of stale bread for the ducks at Astoria Park, until I reminded him ducks shouldn't eat bread, which led to a debate he lost with dignity while leaning against the railing. We watched the water flow. I thought of the woman I had been 5 years ago. Pregnant. Terrified. Locked out. Being told that surviving meant disappearing. I thought of Laura, where Julian had seen the children and frozen because the truth had finally grown too big to ignore. I thought of every document I kept, every late night I worked, every fever I broke alone, every birthday candle lit without a father, every question I delayed until the kids were ready. I hadn't won because Julian felt guilty. I hadn't won because Audra fell. I hadn't won because Eleanor lost control. I had won because my children could ask who they were without anyone else answering first. Harper leaned against me. "We can go home now. Home. Not a hiding place. Not a temporary apartment. Not the life after Julian. Home. Yes, I said. We're going home. We walked back to the little harbor kitchen under the soft streetlights. Inside, I turned the deadbolt and switched off the front lights. The round table sat near the window. 4 chairs tucked underneath. Crumbs on the floor. Evidence of ordinary life. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. Beckett asked me to bring strawberries next time. Declan asked if I know contract law for arugula consent. Harper asked if I know how to draw bunnies. I told them I will practice. I read it twice. Then I replied, "Good. Keep practicing. No hearts. No promises. No reopened doors. Just a boundary with enough room for the kids to breathe." Upstairs, the triplets were brushing their teeth in the tiny bathroom behind the office. Pink, blue, green. I stood in the doorway and watched them argue over toothpaste foam. For years, I had dreaded the day Julian would find us. I thought he would take something. Our peace, our safety, our names, our future. He did take things, illusions, silences, the false comfort of not being known. But he didn't take us. My billionaire ex-husband saw me in a restaurant. The triplets by my side made him freeze. Then, life started moving again. Not backward, but forward. With me holding the keys,